heard several people, because I got to and I'm like, what? And I heard a lady down here go, what do we do about this stuff? How do we handle this? So he goes and tells us, well, you do this and this and this. I'm like, why do they make it so?
Yeah, it was weird.
It's a done deal.
And then I didn't notice when you printed it, because when I printed it, it was all like squished up at the top. So I didn't read it. And I was like, here, and stuck it in the machine. And then they were showing on the news, and it was supposed to like print out on the full length and be legible. And I'm like, well, hopefully that dumb thing did it right.
Yours is canceled.
Yeah.
No suit for you. No vote for you.
We'll call to order the Sunnyvale 4B Economic Development Board meeting for November 7th at 5:03 p.m. All members present except member Anthony, Nair, and Padmanabhan. First, we'll open for public comment. There's nobody in the audience, and we no longer do online, correct? So we'll close public comment, move on to public hearing items. Hold a public hearing, discuss, consider, and act upon recommendation to declare the Trip Road Trail Connection a project and authorize funding in an amount not to exceed $460,000 in accordance with the Texas Local Government Code, Section 505.152. And for the rest of the board, it did go up $40,000 from what we recommended last month, because when it went back to council, they wanted to fence the whole thing. So it's an extra $40,000 for the pipe fencing, which Burton will go over here in a second.
So if I read this correctly, the council has given tacit approval to this in their workshop, right? The council they entertained this at their last workshop, and they gave a nod of approval of sorts for this project.
Yeah, it was to increase. It was to amend the construction manager at risk contract, because of the timeline, the way that it was going to happen. The decision to go forward, it was going to have to be made before we even met. Does that make sense? Well, when we met, it was back as a project later. The timeline to be able to move forward with the construction manager at risk was going to have, the decision to do that was going to have to be done before we could come back. So when we came back, originally we were going to meet on the 1st. We couldn't have a quorum, so now we're here on the 7th. So as far as the project, I think nothing really has changed aside from, like President Wise said, the cost increase was for pipe fence, primarily along this eastern fence line right here, if you can kind of see where the cursor was or is. Originally it was just fencing from the Glazier property down to the fire station, and then from the fire station over. So that's where the additional cost came from. You know, there is, I would say this, there's a pretty healthy contingency in there also. So what? Oh, sorry. So just a little bit of history here. This was a little over a year ago. We applied for a grant through Parks and Wildlife. It wasn't recommended for funding, but that was one of the photos that was in our grant submittal there. Here's some photos from the corner there of Jobson, and then looking to the north, and then also looking back to the east on Tripp. There's the falls looking to the north, and Stony Creek, the trail looking back towards the south. There's the looking to the south from Virgil, there where it, if you kind of look over here in the distance, you can see the Glazier property. Same thing right here. Just more of the same. So, just in summary, this is going to add about 2,045 linear feet of trail along Jobson and Tripp Road. It's going to be 8 feet wide, which would match up with the Falls and Spring Lake Estates. There's some drainage in there. There's a couple of areas. I'm going to see. We can go back to this map. So where this, where the cursor is, you can kind of see here where there's some drainage going down. Same thing right here. There's already culverts there, so what we would probably propose is some sort of tin horn type structure that goes underneath the concrete. And then if you all will remember, this section here is this red is just, it's not exactly where the fence would go. It's just a visual to show that it's only going to be, at most it would be 30 feet off the road from the existing fence line. But the reason that we would propose to push it off on, so and then, you know, the yellow sections here on this map, these would be the ones that are completed, and you know, it makes it possible. Some of these connections are already here, but it just kind of fills in that connection. So in summary, it's not to exceed $460,000, 2,045 linear feet of trail, pipe fencing, drainage, landscaping, the bonds, and then a 7% contingency.
The fencing and sidewalk on the fire station property is being done from fire station budget, is that correct? And then we're just, the 460 is everything.
Yeah, that's part of the fencing is already, for the fire station, is already part of that,
Okay.
their bid. And that's, you know, that's really,
So is the 2045 linear feet inclusive of the entire trail, or what we're doing on 4B only?
that should just be the section for 4B.
Okay, cool. So yeah, so it'll be adding
You know, and something else I wanted to,
more than half a mile altogether.
something I'd point out from the last meeting. I know, I believe member Anthony had requested that we have additional bids, but everything, by utilizing the construction manager at risk contract, all trades and everything has already been competitively bid. So they're required to give 3 bids, to entertain 3 bids for different trades. So the reason that there's not any additional bids is because this has already been competitively bid. And so I know for sure that JD and I were kind of going through when the concrete estimates came back, just the unit costs for some of those. We could already see that our cost that was being proposed to us was actually a better price than what some of our other departments were paying for flat work and things like that, just because of the construction manager at risk contract. So that stuff checked out, which is always good. But anyways, as you all know, just having a public hearing, having it noticed in the paper. It was noticed, re-noticed this week, this Sunday. It was in the Mesquite News. And so basically, once we have the public hearing, answer any questions. Once y'all declare the project, this will go to town council next Monday night. And then once it's approved, we go back 60 days from the date that it showed up in the paper before we can actually expend the funds for the project. So with that, if y'all have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
The 8-foot width, there's actually guidance put out by the American Association of State Highway and Transportation about the recommended width of a trail based on demand at peak use. And I wonder if we're planning for demand for the trails today or 5-10 years out as Sunnyvale grows. And so how do we determine the width being 8 feet, and what would be the additional cost to expand it by, per foot, or has that been assessed?
I mean, 12 feet is standard for most of our grant applications. So, for instance, this picture here, when we submitted for this, it was for 12 foot. I think in this case, it's just the areas around the fire station are going to be 6 to 8 feet. Spring Lake Estates and the Falls is going to be 8 feet. And it was really, the decision was just to match up with that. As far as cost, I mean, if it's 2,045 linear feet, and you add, whatever, I was trying to think of what that would be.
Effectively a third more for concrete.
Yeah, it'd
If
be
it's the same price per
significantly
square
more.
foot. But out of that 460, a lot of that's pipe fence, so.
There's some fixed costs associated.
Right.
There's some fixed costs associated with it, but potentially doing it now could be a cost saver if Sunnyvale does.
Yeah, I mean,
continue to grow.
you're still gonna have to pinch the trail. I mean, once you make those connections, it's still gonna get pinched down to 8 feet.
Certain locations.
Whether it's by,
The
whether
existing
it's by the
trails.
fire station or those trail connections.
Existing trails that come in
That makes sense.
are 8 foot. So this one that's here that runs down where we'll be connecting, and this one that runs down is 8 foot.
Okay.
I agree, I would like it to be 12, but if you're connecting to an 8 foot, you're like,
And from experience, being somebody that's been in a biking collision on a trail that was too small, it wasn't an enjoyable experience. And then, I've been on some really nice trails. Sam Houston Trail, it's pretty wide, very nice trail, great for biking, multi-lanes. I imagine a lot of our residents would appreciate a wider trail. So, for future expansions, talking about where it would be wider would be great, but the narrow trails are.
I just got a note here from our statistician over here. She said that, she's saying that going up to 10 foot would add approximately 500 square foot, 12 foot would add approximately 1,000 linear, square feet of concrete.
I think the 8-foot standard was adopted years ago in town, and it's sort of been put in place by all the subdivisions. So if we were just to expand this random piece of trail to 12 or whatever, it wouldn't really make sense. It's such a limited sum game there. So I think we're being consistent with everything else we've got in town for 8 feet.
That makes sense. What percentage of the trail have we gotten complete when we think about the broader expansion, though? Like throughout the rest of Sunnyvale?
What percentage of our,
What percentage of our trail plan would you say
Very
is
minimal.
actually completed to date?
oh,
it's minimal, so.
It's a small fraction. So
Right.
what I'm just, for now, I just want it to be known that moving forward, I think it'd be a great idea to discuss not Sunnyvale today, but in the future, and talk about, as we finish the build out of the trail, it'd be great to expand it and think about, quantitating some of what the demand will be in the future. Because once we build it, and if it's connected to downtown, if it is connected to the lake at some point in time, there's gonna be much higher demand for the trail. So I wanna be thoughtful, and I wanna raise that point today.
And then in early 2023, we're gonna be bringing up a master trail plan for 4B as part of our projects for next year, and that's where that'll come into play. The rail spur is all planted 12 feet.
Understood.
But yeah, all the major trails should be 12 feet, I agree.
That's helpful, thank you.
Any other questions on this project? I'm excited to get it moving, so.
If you would, just, I know there's not anybody here, but let's open
Anybody
and
like to
close the
comment?
public hearing.
Public hearing. So one thing I would point out is that for a lot of people have concern regarding the horse project, which is still a project to be determined. And by doing this trail, it has minimal impact on the design and potential plans for keeping the horses on site. So both the town staff and the designers of it are conscious of that and trying to minimize any impact and taking away, I can't remember what the square footage was, but it was like less than a total acre, or less than approximately an acre of grazing that'll be removed,
Yeah, it's
from what I was told.
It's 0.98 acres if you come off 30 feet. So that didn't include the section over there along Jobson, but that area is already fenced off further back than
Right.
normal
Yeah, that's not
anyway. So
being
And
used for grazing anyway.
I did meet with the current operator last week and went over everything with them, and they actually were super supportive of the project. They said that they felt like it would bring in some better interaction with people and the horses, and instead of just driving by from the road, you could actually, be somewhat closer. So
Cool. Well, I would like to put forth a motion to approve the Trip Road Trail Connection as a project under AIR 22-196. Not to exceed $460,000. Seconded by, motion made by Member Wise, seconded by Member Cash. All those in favor? Passes unanimously. Next, we move on to the minutes for last month. The only thing I noticed that stood out was we approved it for 420 last month, and we just upped it to 460 for that extra fencing, but everything else looked correct to me.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes from October 11th, 2022, as presented.
Motion made by Member Cash,
Second that.
seconded by Member Chase. All those in favor? And passes unanimously. Next thing is future agenda items. Just gonna ask for an update on the Rails to Trails grant. I know we're getting close to finding out.
yeah, just also, we do have the Veterans Day event that's going to be this Friday. JD, are we sure, is it going to be 5 or is it going to be 5:30? Do we know yet?
It was changed to 5:30 because of the flyover, so we'd have a better opportunity to see the plane. I think moving it to 6 was a little premature. I think they did consider the daylight savings time ending, so next year we'll probably go back to 5 just to be safe, but this year it'll be 5:30.
Yeah, and maybe just go 5:15 this year just to be safe. But
That's here at Town Hall.
That's here at Town Hall this Friday, right? But just kind of some more information, I went to the North Central Texas Council of Governments transportation meeting today, and I'm happy to report that it hasn't been approved and confirmed yet. That won't be until the 8th of December when the Transportation Committee votes, but as of right now, our active transportation alternative grant that we applied for has been recommended for funding. So that's that would be a $1,791,299 grant, and then the matching portion of that would be, I believe, $447,000. So that would be the section that goes. It would be from Tripp up behind the school. It's basically our safe routes to school.
Right, Tripp to Nance,
Tripp to Nance,
and includes the feeders that
correct.
go through the campus, so that's awesome.
Yep. So I was trying to think of where else it goes.
That is 12 feet.
But yeah, I mean it's and then the other statewide call for projects. I know we've talked about that before. It got delayed a little bit. It's not actually the call for projects doesn't even open until the 2nd of December. But we'll be ready to. Already registered for the workshop for that. I believe it's the 29th, and so we'll be ready to apply for the remainder of the trail corridor. So
Awesome. Then, we know in 2023 we're going to be working on the design phase for the rail corridor, rail spur trail, with the grant that was provided us through Dallas County. And so that's a reimbursement grant for over $800,000. So that'll be a lot of work going on at that time. And if we do that in conjunction with the Master Trails Plan, which when we did our Master Parks Plan, there's some highlights of trails, but they were all within individual parks. It didn't include the connecting trails through the whole system. So it'll be similar to what we did with the Master Parks Plan, but just specific to trails. So we'll be very busy in 2023 and hopefully have some economic updates, because it seems like everything we talked about lately is parks and trails. So I know there's a lot of feelers going on up and down 80 and people asking questions around Beltline. So, and as Burton mentioned last time, the George Bush has been turned over to the Tollway Authority, and they're a for-profit entity, so that's probably going to speed that process up. So lots in 2023. Anything else for future agenda? And we're still planning on, I met with the town manager, having a joint session, but doing that shortly after the new year.
Burton, is there any updates on the website? I know it's kind of been, forgot about it for a while.
no, I actually, I believe there were some recommendations from this board as well as to do some different stuff to it, and we didn't lose anything that was done, but I asked them to stop until we decided what we were going to do, so that we weren't just continuing to spend money.
Right.
So we're just kind of on a hold right now. We haven't lost anything. We just got to figure out. I believe that we wanted to try to do some things with the town's website as well, and see if we couldn't do a project together.
Make them a little more cohesive.
Right. So
I agree with that. Any other future agenda items? Not, can I get a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion made by member Chase,
I second that.
seconded by member Zane. All those in favor? We adjourn at 5:28 PM.